Poland disposes of new evidence about Russia's involvement in Smolensk crash. This is according to Poland's defense minister Antoni Macierewicz. He claims Russian controllers and Moscow officials are behind the worst air disaster in Polish history. Warsaw is set to disclose the information in October. The minister specified that the investigative commission is about to present factual evidence, including new recordings of crew conversations, as well as shocking confessions by some members of Miller Committee, a previous investigation group which concluded its probe in 2011. The 2010 plane crash near Russia's Smolensk killed 96 people, including the president of Poland Lech Kaczynski with his wife, the former president in exile Ryszard Kaczorowski, 18 members of parliament and other high-ranking officials.
The Smolensk plane crash that occurred on the 10th of April, 2010, was not actually the murder of Lech Kaczynski, but an internal Polish purge to eliminate various ideological figures, which in this case would strongly indicate the purge of opponents of the EU and Ukraine fake war from within Poland.
Amateur video caught the start of the Polish president's trip this morning in Warsaw. Then in a bleak and foggy forest in western Russia, news cameras documented its tragic end. Approaching low and fast about a mile from the airport, the Soviet-era Tupolev jet clipped the treetops and crashed. 97 people were on board. No one survived.
Prezydent Polski Lech Kaczyński nie żyje.
Along with 60-year-old President Lech Kaczynski and his wife, an honor roll of the Polish establishment perished. The army chief of staff, the head of national security, the country's central banker. Poland is mourning the death of 88 of its most celebrated citizens, lawmakers and history makers, the Civil Rights Commissioner, the Olympic Committee president, all killed in what one official called an unbelievable tragedy with a spine-chilling twist. They'd been on their way to a memorial ceremony marking 70 years since another tragedy on Russian soil, the wartime massacre of thousands of Poles by Soviet troops at Katyn Forest, a ceremony today full of empty seats. A formal crash investigation's just beginning, of course, but the Russians are suggesting the cause may have been pilot misjudgment in bad weather. They say air traffic controllers worried about fog had urged the presidential pilot to divert to another airport. Seth?
Now, Richard, Poland is an important NATO country. Who's running the country now?
Well, government continuity is not interrupted. The prime minister is the real power running Poland, and he wasn't on the flight. Much of the president's role is ceremonial, and analysts don't see a threat to Poland's political or financial stability. But it's a huge loss, and to the extent that a nation can have emotions, Poland tonight is feeling shock.
All right, Richard Roth in London, thank you very much.
With these working methods learned from Nazi Germany and Hitler, the Gdansk maniac and hooligan in his own words, Donald Tusk has taken a stronger hold on Poland with this internal purge he has carried out, the purpose of which has been to wipe out all political opponents from the army and the entire bureaucracy. The Smolensk accident, where a lot of high-ranking Polish leaders such as army generals, long-standing MPs from 4 different parties, Internal Security Leader Aleksander Szydło, National Remembrance Leader Janusz Kurtyka, the place from which the Polish President Karol Nawrocki has also become president, the President of the Polish Bank Sławomir Skrzypek, the President of the Olympic Committee Piotr Nuralski, and many other high-ranking leaders died. Such an accident clearly points to the internal cleansing of the leading EU-positive elite in Poland, which can have no other purpose than to eliminate from Poland all honest pro-Russian and anti-EU opponents from the decision-making positions, so that there are no opponents for Ukraine's fake war and its money laundering, and which action is almost identical to what Nazi Germany practiced in the 30s when it cleared all opponents to the grave and away from the Nazi dictatorship, and what Poland. Nazi Donald Tusk is now foaming at the mouth like any Nazi lunatic without any sense in his head. And this action proves that democracy can't really work because there's no way to prevent or prove such purges, and mentioning them just brands people as conspiracy theorists, which just means that these democracies are really the worst dictatorships that are just waiting for their takers and insane Nazi criminals like Donald Tusk. However, the Smolensk accident is not the only suspicious accident in Poland, but these accidents form a clear continuum, which are actually attacks with terrorist intent against one's own country and its people, some of which are aimed at eliminating political opponents, such as the Smolensk accident. The Smolensk accident was preceded by the Polish Air Force C-295 accident, which is almost identical to the Smolensk accident, in that both occurred very close to the airport, about 500 meters before landing and during the approach phase, and in both cases the aircraft banked to the left, to about 70 degrees, and fell a few hundred meters from the glide path. Both of these crash sites were cleaned up before these photos were taken, which means that half of the fuselages of these planes were already removed from the crash site before these photos were taken, as evidenced by this part of the Tupolev Tu-154 fuselage, which is almost completely unscathed and clean, while the rest of the crash site is like a post-war scene, which means that these planes may have been in reasonably good condition and that there were survivors in these accidents, just like Dag Hammarskjöld's plane crash in Dalarna, where the only one official survivor, Julian Harold, was murdered in hospital by medically, because these cases are not allowed to have eyewitnesses or survivors to tell what really happened and why the possible survivors of these Polish accidents were executed at the crime scene like the Jews on the streets of Germany in the 40s with the neck shots. If you look closely at this crime scene of the Hammarskjöld crash, you can see how similar it is with Smolensk accident crash site, even how nicely and elegantly Captain Pahelenquist has performed an emergency landing in a forest full of bushes as thick as a wrist, which actually has only softened this emergency landing, which is almost similar to Air France Flight 296, where you can see the glide slope gradient in the treetops. Hammarskjöld plane that was shot full of holes with two Forger Magister 7.62mm machine guns, and why the remains of this plane have also been destroyed into fist-sized pieces so that no evidence of bullet holes in the DC-6 remains. I have encountered such small debris left from Hammarskjöld's plane in connection with Selkair Flight 185. When First Officer Duncan Ward crashed the 737 vertically and at the speed of sound into a river. As a crime reporter who has investigated these accidents in 170 cases, I estimate that these crash sites only contain about 20% of these crash planes, which means that the remaining 80% of these planes have already been removed from the crash site. If this Smolensk accident is considered together with the Polish Air Force C-295 accident, which occurred in January 2008, dozens of high-ranking soldiers of the Polish army were murdered in these two accidents, the purpose of which could not have been anything other than the internal cleansing of Poland, which is clearly the Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk's war against communism, and which Nazi Germany also carried out with the mouth of Nazi Hitler in the 40s when the gangbang of Nazi Party and Germany executed unreliable individuals from the Nazi regime and Germany.
Und der Vergiftung des Auslandes auszubrennen, wie auch das rohe Kleid. Wenn mir jemand einen Vorwurf entgegengreift, weshalb wir nicht die ordentlichen Gerichte zur Aburteilung herangezogen hätten, dann kann ich ihm nur sagen, in dieser Stunde war ich verantwortlich für das Schicksal der deutschen Nation und damit des deutschen Volkes oberster Gerichtsherr.